So this session is called Mindfulness and Photography. I'm a keen amateur photographer. Photography is a bit of a passion of mine, which hopefully that will come through through this presentation. And I was really surprised but thankful for the Forest of Dean Dementia Action Alliance for asking me to do this, because it's made me think about my photography in creating this presentation. I say this on my website that I find photography can be inspiring, challenging, and thought-provoking. And they're the words that motivate me to go out and take photographs. It helps me express my feelings, get my creative juices going, and transform what I see in front of me into my own visual interpretation. And I love seeing great pictures anyway. You know, I follow a lot of work by fellow photographers, Andy included, and there's some great images around. And not only is it good to see them, but I think it's good to share them. And it's great that other people share their photographs. And I like capturing just the normal natural pictures, but also I do dabble with a bit of special effects, creative effects every now and again. And I think that helps stimulate debate. Definition of mindfulness. I thought I ought to look this up because I've been asked to relate my photography in that context, and I guess there's probably more than one definition on the internet, but I found this one that seems to fit well, and I will read this out. That mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. Mindfulness is a quality that every human being already possesses. It's not something you have to conjure up or learn. You just have to learn how to access it. Now, I feel this ability that we have can be a significant factor in the art of photography, and certainly it helps me to connect with my subjects. So I'll talk a little bit about my photography. First of all, I think it's about being what's around you. Now, I've been taking photographs for many, many years. My first camera I had, I think, when I was about 15, so I've lied a bit about my age there, but we won't go into that. And I certainly got the bug. I did a bit of home processing, black and white film, and then back in the day, it was very popular to use slides or transparencies, which you showed through a projector. And I've still got hundreds and hundreds of slides and a projector. And there was certainly an excitement for those of you who've used film, whereby you went out and took some pictures and you had to wait to get them back before you could see them, sometimes 2 weeks before you saw them. And that built up that sort of emotion and that pent-up excitement of is the film going to turn out? And how many good photographs will I have on that film? And there was a uniqueness about that process. And then digital came along, the digital age took over, and that changed the landscape quite a bit. My first camera was a Kodak 1 megapixel camera. And it's hard to say that cameras got 1 megapixels these days, but yes, it did. And it was state of the art. And the batteries lasted about an hour before you had to change them. But things have changed, and I moved on as well. And digital now has its own benefits. You do get your instant photograph. So although you lose that little bit of excitement of having to wait to see if your photographs have turned out, that's replaced by the excitement of getting that image right in front of you straight away and being able to share it straight away. And I enjoy using a traditional type of rangefinder camera, which I have, as well as a modern day mirrorless digital camera. I've also got a small collection of film cameras, which I pull out every now and again. And that's a picture of what my first camera looked like. I had a Helena Paulette electric that cost £13.19 and sixpence. And yes, 3 of us will remember that coinage and that currency. 2 of you won't. So what inspires me? Well, my main photographic passions are street photography and landscapes. You know, I will take pretty much anything that captures my imagination or I think could be an interesting subject to follow. But those are my key passions. and more, and certainly in the last couple of years, I like using converting those color pictures into black and white, into monochrome. It can give a completely different perspective to a color image. And you may not be aware, but there are cameras out there that only produce images in black and white. They don't produce in color, and they cost more than the color version, but they produce a wider, what's called dynamic range. So the blacks are blacker, the whites are whiter, and every shade of grey in between is far more enhanced. But I haven't succumbed to that purchase yet.
Yeah.
I'm not a great reader, but I do read articles in photography that interest me. And I did buy a copy of the famous book by Henry Cartier-Bresson called The Decisive Moment, which is specifically about street photography, which if you ever get a chance to read, is fantastic. And there's some wonderful pictures in there. And whether you've ever seen this or not, but there's been a series over the last few years. I think it's been held up by coronavirus at the moment, on Sky Arts, called Master of Photography. And if you ever get a chance to watch that, it is available on Catch Up. It's fascinating. It really is a very good series to watch. So for me, being aware of what's happening around me helps me create interesting image. And I've just picked out a few here. First one on the left, I just find this fascinating. This guy is sat there completely unaware of the wonderful, wonderful artwork that he's backed up against. And I've sat there for a while taking a few pictures, and people just walk past. And there's more than one piece of artwork on this huge hoarding in Cheltenham. And then the top right, again, that's Cheltenham. And this guy is blissfully aware as he walks past that the two posters are staring him down and wondering where he's going, and thinking, well, he probably can't really come into us because he doesn't really need a haircut. That's my interpretation of that picture. And then there's a couple of other typical captures of people just in their own thoughts, miles away, engrossed in whatever they're doing. The guy on the right, who knows what he's thinking? Maybe where's my next meal coming from? So I love people watching. I find that fascinating, but it can be quite challenging to capture those photographs. I also find that in terms of landscape specifically, immersing yourself in the environment is needed to visualize a picture that you might want to create. So, for example, in this one, I wanted to get that symmetry between the copse of trees on the hill and the reflection of it in the river, but also I wanted to bring people into the river, into the picture, and that red boy does that. Not only does that, but then I think it enhances the wonderful reflections of the pastel painted cottages that are in the background there. And what's wonderful about this is that the best times of the day to take pictures are what they call the golden hour, which tends to be early morning or late evening or early afternoon. And this was taken in the afternoon when the light is warmer and not so harsh as the middle of the day. And you'll probably note that that is the Wye Valley. So, you know, I'm really lucky where we live, you know, close to forest and the Wye Valley. Wonderful location, endless opportunities to take pictures. I also, you know, as I said, like taking street photography. So Bristol and Cardiff are easy cities locally to get to, but there are plenty of other opportunities around. And these are just a few pictures I took the other week, just having a wander around Nag's Head Nature Reserve. And yeah, just spring is sprung as far as I could tell from these pictures. And it's there on our doorstep. More challenging and more edgy are the streets of Bristol. But by chance, I was there on a day when there was a protest march going on. And it was great to get amongst those young people and get some pictures. Photography is an art and therefore subjective. Now, I know there are people who think that photography isn't an art, but probably we should keep that debate for another day. But for me, it is an art, and like other art forms, it's very subjective, and therefore, you know, what floats your boat might not float someone else's. I'm a member of a camera club I joined earlier in the year, and they tend to concentrate on, for me, on creating technically perfect images. As I found to my dismay when putting in what I think is a really good picture into a competition, and to have it torn apart because there was a telegraph pole on the horizon that I could have removed in Photoshop. But that's the way they work. And certainly the old adage, the camera never lies, is a relic of the past, because we know now the camera probably always lies. Making tweaks and enhancements in post-production is pretty commonplace these days. For me, I like working to a project rather than just aimlessly, you know, wander about. I do like project-based work, and I've done quite a few. My website tends to be constructed that way. Recently done one about some of the villages of the Forest of Dean, and I found that fascinating, just walking down the side streets I've never walked down before. You know, Blakeney I've driven through hundreds of times. Have I stopped anywhere? Yes, at the fish and chip shop. Yes, at the restaurant when it was a restaurant. It's now a nursery, I think. But never walked down the side streets, never had any need to. And it was fascinating what I found walking around there and other villages around. Also, the two bridges that cross the Severn, absolutely fascinating in terms of their architecture. And when I've walked the old bridge and taken photographs from up there, and it's amazing what images you can get of the structures. Graffiti is another favourite of mine. If you head down to Bristol, home of Banksy, and walk around the Stokes Croft area, there's some absolutely amazing artwork that people have put on buildings, and you just wonder how they do it. And another favourite of mine is what I call selective colour, where you convert a colour image to black and white, but then leave an object in that picture that's still in colour to highlight it, emphasize it, create a different perspective of that picture. So the Forest of Dean villages, they're available to see on the website if you've got time to go and have a look. There's just a few there. Andy knows the one on the right very, very well because he lives there. And Newnham is a fascinating place. Who knew there were so many historic buildings in such a small village? It's and a battlefield. You know, it's fantastic. And now a very famous telephone box.
Absolutely.
Which Andy and his villagers have managed to save,
yeah.
Which is fantastic. On selective colour, there's a few examples of selective colour, which this works for me. As I said earlier, it's whatever floats your boat with photography. But I just love this concept of picking out, in the top left hand as the example, you know, there's, I don't know, I mean, 9 or 10 people in that little group that were being shown around the graffiti work in Bristol, and out of all of them, it's great to have someone who's wearing a bright colour, because that's great for selective colour. And that girl was also doing something in her own little world, and probably not listening to what was being explained to her by the tour guide, but probably wondering where her mates were on social media. And then just other simple ones like the crossing with the green lights. And Mallard's Pike found this table that was left there for a few days. I'm not sure if it was after a party or for whatever reason it had been left there, but it had been left there. And just identifying those colours, picking those colours out, I just thought made a difference to what would have probably been quite a boring photograph, really. And I love the traffic cones. I just they're just sort of everywhere, aren't they? Traffic cones. But when you isolate them like that, they sort of are they marching on their way for a cup of coffee in that building, or wherever they might be going. And my favourite place in all the world, on the left, bottom left there, is Siena in Italy, and that's in the famous square, Piazza del Campo. If you ever get the chance to go to Siena once in your life, please take it. It's a beautiful place. So becoming mindful of the beauty that surrounds me is what I've realized is important. And it's only this, doing this presentation, or being asked to do this presentation, that really made me realize that. You know, I love photographing trees. They have a mystery about them. You know, the changing seasons brings different ways of photographing them. And I think if you walked into the Arboretum without a camera, you would say what beautiful trees there are, and what lovely foliage, and oh, that's a fern, and that's a spruce, or whatever it is. But when you've got a camera with you, you look at them in a different way. You think, well, hang on, that the way those branches there are sort of twisted and sculpted, almost the bark of the tree is creating a face, and the textures of the bark, or the growth on the bark just creates different effects. So it's different when you've got a camera than when you haven't. And I think that's what the mindfulness brings to the hobby. It's also a way of losing yourself, you know, getting out of the noise of everyday life. And that makes you more mindful of the beauty that's around you. And these are just a few pictures of trees. Not that you haven't seen a tree before, but that's some of the skulls that I found. And of course, autumn is just beautiful in the forest. We're lucky to be so close to that. Picture stories. As I said earlier, people fascinate me, but they are quite challenging to photograph. Do you surreptitiously try and get a candid photograph, which are great? Do you risk being spotted by the person who you're trying to photograph, and that could become confrontational? How close do you get to them? Do you try with a long lens, but that makes you conspicuous? I tend to use a fairly compact camera when I'm doing street photography to try and be discreet. And this topic, or this concept, started for me when I was in Cardiff. And the guy on the left there, Jim, I was walking down through a subway, and I could see him in the distance, and I thought, oh yeah, I could get a picture of him. So I did put a longer lens on and sort of leant against the wall and tried to get a photograph of him from a distance, but it just didn't feel right. So I put that away and walked up, and I just chatted to him, and I said, can I take a couple of pictures? I love your dog. You know, talked about the animal. Most people like if you talk about their animals. And I put a couple of quid in his jar or his tub or whatever. He got a hat, I think. And I just asked him how he got to be where he was. And he told me his story. And that story is on my website. And this was the first time I did this. And I actually say at the end of the very short narrative that this is Jim's story. It's not my story of Jim, it's what Jim told me about him. And it may not be true. It may be a way of him getting more money in his little house. But it was Jim's story. And that's what started off, and I found it fascinating. And it's about being in the right place at the right time with the right person that helps me engage with people. You can't always feel that it's right to do it. And the one on the right, Bernie, I was just taking photographs of the waterfall behind her. She came across this little bridge, and she was chatty. She was Irish, from Ballyskillen, I think, originally. And we just had a wonderful chat. And I said, can I take you? Oh, no, I never have my photograph done. No, I don't have my photograph done. I said, yeah, but you've got a wonderful face. I'd love to take it. And she agreed. And I said, just keep talking. And she did. And I just snapped a few pictures. And third of about a dozen, I think I've done now. Have you seen this guy around? You may have seen him. He walks up and down around the forest quite a lot. His name Lenny. And he frightened the life out of him. He came up behind me when I was taking some pictures in Whitecroft and said, have you got any today? As if I'd been fishing. And we got chatting. And he's a pagan, and he just wonders about, and he's a great character. He originates from Ross-on-Wye. And I said, you've got a great face. Can I take your photograph? And he said, no, I never had my photograph taken. I said, go on, I'll just take a few. And if you don't like them, you know, I can delete them. And he let me take a few. And I just thought, he was telling me something, and he was using old quotes to explain what he was trying to tell me. And that's Lenny. Photographs and taking photographs certainly helps my well-being. The last 4 or 5 years have been quite tough, looking after Kathy, who recently passed away with Alzheimer's. And being able to get out a couple of times a week when my carer came in for a few hours and taking photographs when it was possible was a great way for me to be able to get away from that different environment. And it gets you outdoors, it gets you into the fresh air, it gets your mind thinking differently to the everyday stuff that's going on. And you can meet people, as you've seen from the previous images that I've took. So certainly photography for me helps my mental state. You might never produce a perfect picture, but and very few people do, but you can get great joy out of seeing the results of what you've done, and sometimes someone will say to you, that's a great picture. And these are just a few I've taken in recent weeks. You'll see that one again, Andy.
Okay.
The bottom right.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought about this since last week when I was putting this presentation together, that I think photography helps me to be me. It took me a while to realize it, I think, but although it can be a casual activity, you know, taking snaps on your holidays or just for post on social media, you know, I'm keen amateur, as I call myself, and when I'm out taking pictures that aren't the casual ones, I do immerse myself in that process. And I guess it's a feeling of becoming just completely engaged with that process and the subject that I'm trying to capture at that time, and create something that's in my mind that I think would be the end result. And nothing else is important until I've captured that moment. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you know, when I'm out taking pictures, I am removed from the day-to-day issues that otherwise I might be preoccupied with. And I think that can help relieve stress, for whatever reason that we have that stress, even if it's only for a short time. And the other important thing, following on from the camera club reference earlier on, it's my photograph. It's what I've made, what I've created, and that's what's most important. And yes, you know, people will have their other opinions and critiques and interpretations, and I welcome that and do seek that, because you can always strive to improve and get better ideas or different ideas. But the images that I create are how I picture them in my head, and for me, that's the result that's important, and I'm the only one who needs to be satisfied with the end result. Another one at Newnham, which someone said, well, you can't see the view. Well, you don't need to see the view. Imagine it. That's a statement that you've probably heard before. The best camera is the one that you have with you. And many great picture opportunities are missed because your camera was left at home. I've certainly done that on no end of occasion. Or worse still, you're driving down the motorway and you see a fantastic picture opportunity, but you know you can't stop to take it. But nowadays, everybody's got a camera with them. It's in their phone, and phone cameras are so good. So there's no real excuse for not being able to get out and take pictures. Yes, if you want more control and you want to do certain types of photography, a proper camera will help you. But modern day phone cameras are very, very good. And here's just a few examples of pictures taken on a phone. And the reason why you can get good pictures with a simple camera or phone it's because of being mindful of what you see. You know, it's in this presentation, I believe you've seen that, you know, yes, having a good camera is one thing, but it doesn't necessarily make you a good photographer. It's how you interpret that scene, that view, that person, and how the different viewpoints that you might take, the different angles that you might use that can be the difference between a nice snap, as I say there, or a great picture. So the question is, of course, for the millions of people who are listening to this presentation, can I inspire you? And probably a lot of you here don't need to be inspired, but if you do, and I can give you a little bit of inspiration, it's now time to get out with whatever camera you've got and try a different approach to creating some images that will be special to you. Think about what it is that you want to go and photograph and what you're trying to achieve at the end of that. Visualize how that photograph should look, whether it's a landscape or personality in a portrait, or maybe a satirical picture message. If you go and look at some of the signs around streets, some of the juxtapositions you can get can create some really humorous photographs. So, like with the projects I talked about before, if you're going to go out and take some photographs, set yourself a topic rather than just go out aimlessly and hope that you'll find something of interest, or set a little project that you complete over a period of time, like I did with the village of the Forest of Dean. I knew I wasn't going to do that in a week, and it's still an ongoing project. So when I decide one day to go and visit wherever, I'll go and do another village and add it to the project. And my friend who is sat here, Andy, we take it in turns around about every 4 to 6 weeks to choose a topic, and we, whatever that topic is, we interpret the picture ourselves, and then we get together over coffee or lunch preferably, and we normally limit it to about 6 pictures, and just look at what we've come up with. And it's amazing how different people interpret different topics. And as one example here, this one was called Connection. That was a topic, and you got 2 very different interpretations of that same topic. Andy's is the one on the left, which is a brilliant shot of the connection between the owner and his dog, who clearly is distraught at the fact that there's going to be nothing left for him to eat in that carton. And my interpretation was, well, this boat is connected to land, and for that moment in time, until it's seaborne or canal-borne, it's connected. And it's just great to get your mind thinking about how you can do that. For those of you who don't know anything about photography, I've put together some simple tips and techniques that might be helpful for improving your pictures. Just one example here, which is a very common one, avoiding camera shake, where we press the button or force the button on the front of the phone, and in low light particularly, it will result in the image on the left. And people wonder why their pictures are a little bit fuzzy, and that's one of the most common reasons for it. And there's some other hints and tips I've got, which are at the bottom of this presentation document, which can be emailed out if you want to see it. The next question, of course, and thanks to Sarah for this from last week, is what will you do with your wonderful pictures once you've got them? Because for me, the joy of is not only taking the pictures, but sharing them. And social media is great. It's quick, it reaches hundreds, thousands of people almost immediately, and encourages feedback, which you'll often get with a like or a love. But they tend to be a bit superficial, those likes. Most people will like a post that a friend puts up. They probably liked it before they've even read the post. So they're not always sincere likes. And then the next time you refresh or go back into your social media, that post will have disappeared in the hundreds that have followed in the last 5 minutes. So your photograph's gone, it's not there to view. You can use Instagram, that's obviously better for it, or you could create your own Facebook page that you just use for photographs and direct people to that. But your phone or your tablet, if you use a tablet, normally the photo app, it enables you to create albums. And that's a great way of categorizing your projects or your special events, your birthdays, your holidays, wherever it might be. And that's a better way of doing it, because you can easily find it then if you want to show your friends when you're out and about what you've been up to. Or use this app that I've used called Adobe Spark. You know, it's simple, it's free. Not only can you add in your photographs, but you can, you can put your story behind it and share it very easily. Or if you're a bit IT savvy, you can create your own website. And doing that these days is very, very easy. There's lots of apps out there that enable you to do it. Or the old-fashioned way, create yourself a book, an album. And fortunately, you don't have to get those little sticky corners and spend hours leveling them all up into a book and finding that after a couple of years they've peeled off or they've faded. There's so many companies online now where you can upload your images and create your own photo book, and they're not that expensive. They come in different formats, different sizes. For the last 4 or 5 years, for Kathy, I did one for her birthday every February that I called Memories and Moments. These were the moments that we had that were worth capturing, and they're the memories that I can keep. And they're just easy to do, and they're there as a physical way of looking at your pictures. This presentation came about because of my association with the DAA, the Dementia Action Alliance. Kathy and myself, participated quite a bit over the last year or so, particularly with the dog days, which she loved, which I took some photographs for. And I won't say this next week because you all know about it, but I've been trying to get extra support for the DAA with the other project that I've been doing, which is the big photo album, which people have supported to a degree. So if we can get more of that, that would be great. But finally, there is a challenge if you want to take it on, if you've been encouraged by this presentation, and over the next 4 weeks is to create a picture or 2 pictures for topics, circles and lines. Very straightforward topics, 2 separate images. You can enter just one or both. And once you're taking your pictures, visit my website. There's a link within this presentation. Look for photo challenge, and there's a way that you can upload your image. And I'll put them in a gallery on that page after on the 3rd of June, and you can see what other photographs people may have put and how they interpret circles and lines.